I'm Lloyd Holiday, and this is the Cost of a Thing podcast. Thanks for listening in today. So what happened to that great standard of living that we used to enjoy here in America in the 1960s and even into the 1970s? Well, that's what the Cost of a Thing podcast is all about, and that's what I'm going to be talking about here. Okay, today I'm going to talk about who is the real Queen's Gambit World Chess Champion. Now, this all came up because I watched the show, the Netflix short series called The Queen's Gambit, about a young American girl who ended up winning the World Chess Championship. Of course, that was a fictional. It never happened. It's just completely fictional. But it got me thinking about the real American World Chess Championship winner, and that was Bobby Fischer, who won that championship in 1972. He was the first American to ever win the World Chess Championship. And like I said, the Queen's Gambit was a series on Netflix that they made, and actually it was a pretty good show. I don't usually like to watch Netflix-made shows because they end up throwing in a lot of unnecessary cursing and vulgarity and vomiting scenes, toileting scenes, and unfortunately masturbation scenes. As I remember, this show had none of that, so it wasn't a bad show. And of course it was a pure fantasy. There's never been a little girl that turned out to grow up to be the U.S. Championship and then go on to win the World Championship. That was Bobby Fischer who did that. He was the first American to ever win the World Chess Championship at age 29 in 1972. Previously, the previous 35 years before that, the championship had been in Russian hands. Bobby Fischer won the championship from Boris Spassky, who was a Russian, and he was the champion at the time. And Bobby Fischer had won previously to that the U.S. Championship at age 14. Was the youngest ever international grandmaster at age 15. And it was said he has a IQ of 181. So, yeah, chess is a very mental game, and I'd say you got to be pretty smart to win at that game. Now, I was a kid in the 1960s and into the 70s, and I can tell you this, that at the time, in the late 60s and early 70s, Bobby Fischer was a full-blown American hero for winning that chess championship. Everybody knew who he was. He was super famous. He was, everybody loved him. He was just a great American hero at the time and a great role model for all the kids, including me. And one of the reasons he was such a big hero was because there was this intense competition with the Soviet Union, the USSR, between the USSR and the United States at the time. And it was in everything. It was in space or sports or Olympics, even chess, maybe especially chess, to see which economic system was the best. The competition, capitalism in the United States versus communism in the Soviet Union. And when Bobby Fischer won the championship, first American ever from the Russians, that made him this superhero at the time. And I would go as far to say as he was as big a hero as the astronauts who landed on the moon in 1969 and in the early 70s and the other moon missions that they had. And I had kind of forgotten about Bobby Fischer after all these years. And that movie, The Queen's Gambit, it brought back his memory to me and how great of a feat that was that he pulled off there in 1972 to win that World Chess Championship, which I don't think has been won by any other American. And interestingly, I knew a lot about Bobby Fischer, but I'd never seen him that I remember on a video or on TV at the time. I saw pictures of him in the newspaper and books and so forth like that, but I never saw him in a video. And because at the time, they'd be on a talk show or something like that. Maybe it'd be late at night or during the day when I was gone at school or something. Well, just the other day, I did see him. It's the first time I ever saw him in a video, and so you could kind of see his personality and so forth. And it was on the old Dick Cavett show. There's some reruns shown right here on YouTube. And, you know, it was quite interesting to see who this guy really was, because I'd only seen writing about him. You know, there was a lot written about him and a lot of pictures taken, but I never saw him in person, in action on a video. And I watched that for the first time the other day, and that was quite interesting. He was a little different than I thought, kind of had like a New York-y type accent, and you'd have to watch that video, and I'll put the link in here down below in the description to that Dick Cavett show video, which he was one of the big talk show guys at the time, and I think he was on like in the afternoon, probably when I was at school or something. So, and I never watched that. My mom would watch Dick Cavett, but I never really watched it. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up, and I just wanted to bring that forward. And if anybody didn't know that Bobby Fischer is the real world chess champion, well, there it is. And you can learn all about him now on the internet. It's easy to find. There's lots of videos on there of him. And of course, I've got the one in my description down below, the link to the Dick Cavett show around the early 1970s where he appeared on there. And I just wanted to bring this out too, because that was one of the things that made it great to live in the 60s and 70s, was that we had great heroes that were real heroes that actually did something very difficult. And it really made living in the 60s and 70s that much greater to have these guys around. And they were inspirations to the rest of us, and probably inspired the rest of us to do some of the better things we did in life. And, you know, I've been thinking about pulling out my old chess set and playing a couple of games of chess. So I may do that this week, and I hope you do too, because it's a good game, and it's a fun game, and it also gives a good exercise for the mind. Thank you for listening in today, and until next time, this is Lloyd Holiday signing off.